The Texas sun hammered down without mercy on the rocky trail where Marcus Webb had finally reached the end of his rope. 3 years of searching for silver in these unforgiving hills had yielded nothing but disappointment, debt, and the hollowed-out feeling of a man who had bet everything on a dream that refused to materialize. His burro, the faithful companion who had carried his meager prospecting equipment through countless dry creek beds and empty canyons, plodded along with the same weary resignation Marcus felt in his bones. In his saddlebag were the last of his supplies: 2 pieces of hardtack, a small pouch of jerky, and barely enough water to make it back to the nearest town. Marcus had already decided this would be his final trip into the hills. Tomorrow he would sell his equipment, pay what debts he could, and find work doing something, anything, that didn't involve chasing phantom veins of silver through rock and sand. He was 32 years old and had nothing to show for the prime years of his life except calloused hands and sun-damaged skin. As the afternoon heat reached its peak, Marcus noticed something unusual ahead on the trail. A figure lay sprawled in the shade of a scraggly mesquite tree, unmoving. Marcus's first instinct was caution. Survival in the frontier meant being wary of traps and desperate men, but as he drew closer, he could see this was no ambush. The man was in genuine distress, his lips cracked and bleeding, his breathing shallow, his clothes dusty and torn. His horse stood nearby, also looking worse for wear, its water bag empty and torn. Marcus dismounted and approached carefully. The man's eyes fluttered open, glazed with dehydration and exhaustion. He tried to speak but could barely form words. Without overthinking it, Marcus pulled out his precious water canteen and held it to the stranger's lips, supporting his head as he drank in small, careful sips. The man's eyes focused slightly, showing gratitude mixed with confusion at being helped by someone who clearly had little to spare. Marcus didn't know why he did what he did next. Maybe it was because he had been close to this same desperate state himself more than once. Maybe it was because his mother had raised him to help people in need, even when you had needs of your own. Or maybe it was simply because walking past a dying man wasn't something he could live with, no matter how little he possessed. He pulled out his last pieces of food and offered them without hesitation, watching as the stranger ate slowly, color gradually returning to his weathered face. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Marcus helped the man sit up properly against the tree trunk, sharing the remainder of his water between them and the 2 horses. The stranger finally found his voice, rough and gravelly. "Name's Benjamin. You just saved my life, friend. I won't forget that." Marcus shrugged, feeling oddly at peace despite having just given away his last meal. "Marcus Webb. Just couldn't leave you there. We'll make it back to town together. Safety in numbers out here." What Marcus didn't know as they prepared to travel together was that this simple act of kindness, offered without calculation or expectation of reward, had just set in motion a series of events that would transform his life in ways he could never have imagined. The ride back to town took 2 days instead of the usual one, as Benjamin was too weak to travel quickly. Marcus shared what little remained of his supplies without complaint, rationing carefully to ensure they both made it. During the long hours on the trail, the 2 men talked in the easy way that develops between people thrown together by circumstance. Benjamin asked about Marcus's prospecting work, listening with genuine interest as Marcus described the geology of the region, the techniques he had learned, and the stubborn hope that had kept him searching despite 3 years of failure. Marcus found himself opening up in ways he rarely did, perhaps because Benjamin listened without judgment or the pitying looks he had grown accustomed to in town. He talked about his father, who had died in a mining accident back in Colorado, and how finding silver had become more than just a dream of wealth. It had become a way to prove his father's belief in him had been justified. Benjamin nodded thoughtfully, his weathered face showing understanding that went deeper than mere sympathy. For his part, Benjamin shared little about himself, saying only that he worked in cattle and land management, traveling between properties to check on operations. His clothes, though dusty and torn from his ordeal, had once been of good quality. His horse, despite its current condition, was clearly a fine animal. Marcus got the sense there was more to Benjamin's story, but frontier courtesy meant not prying into a man's business unless he volunteered the information. On the second evening, as they made camp in a small canyon that provided shelter from the wind, Benjamin watched Marcus carefully divide their last bit of food, making sure Benjamin got the larger portion despite his protests. "You're a rare man, Marcus Webb," Benjamin said quietly. "Most prospectors I've known are so focused on their own fortune they wouldn't spare water for their own shadow. You gave your last meal to a complete stranger without hesitation. That says something about character." Marcus stirred the small fire, uncomfortable with the praise. "Just did what anyone should do. Besides, money and silver won't mean much if I lose my humanity finding them. My mother used to say that how you treat people when you've got nothing tells you who you really are." Benjamin was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. "Your mother was a wise woman. I've known plenty of men with full pockets and empty souls. Give me an honest man with empty pockets any day." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning Marcus didn't fully understand yet. The next morning, as they approached the outskirts of the small frontier town of Redemption, Benjamin turned to Marcus with an expression that mixed gratitude with something else, perhaps calculation or decision. "I'm staying at the hotel in town for a few days. Would you do me the honor of joining me for a proper meal once we're settled? It's the least I can do to thank you for saving my life." Marcus agreed, thinking it would be a fitting end to his prospecting career, one good meal before he sold his equipment and figured out what came next. He had no idea that this simple dinner invitation would be the doorway to an entirely different future. The hotel dining room in Redemption was the finest establishment in town, which wasn't saying much by city standards but represented luxury in this dusty frontier outpost. Marcus felt out of place in his worn prospecting clothes, but Benjamin had insisted, and after days of hardtack and jerky, the smell of real cooking was too tempting to refuse. They were shown to a corner table, and Marcus noticed the staff treated Benjamin with unusual deference, though he couldn't figure out why. Over plates of steak, potatoes, and vegetables that tasted like heaven after weeks of trail food, Benjamin asked Marcus about his plans. Marcus admitted honestly that he was finished with prospecting, that he needed to find real work that would actually put food on the table. Benjamin listened thoughtfully, asking detailed questions about Marcus's skills, his knowledge of land and geology, his experience managing equipment and supplies in harsh conditions. The conversation was interrupted when a well-dressed man approached their table, his expensive suit marking him as someone important in the territory. "Mr. Cross," the man said with obvious respect, "I didn't know you were in town. The council would like to discuss the water rights matter when you have time." Benjamin nodded politely. "Tomorrow afternoon, Harrison. I'm occupied this evening." The man glanced curiously at Marcus before departing with a slight bow. Marcus felt confusion settling over him. Cross was a name that carried weight in Texas, but it couldn't be the same Cross, could it? Benjamin Cross was legendary in these parts, a cattle baron who owned more land than some eastern states, who controlled water rights, mineral rights, and vast stretches of the frontier. That Benjamin Cross was said to be reclusive and tough, a man who had built an empire through shrewd dealings and iron will. This couldn't possibly be the same person Marcus had found dying by the side of the trail. Benjamin watched the realization dawn on Marcus's face with a slight smile. "I see you figured it out. Yes, I'm that Benjamin Cross. I own the Cross Cattle Company, along with considerable land holdings throughout West Texas. The reason I was alone on that trail is because I like to inspect my properties personally, without an entourage. Usually works fine. This time, my horse threw a shoe, I got turned around in the heat, and well, you know the rest." Marcus sat back, stunned. The man whose life he had saved with his last meal was one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in Texas. The implications were staggering, but also uncomfortable. "I didn't help you because of who you were," Marcus said quietly. "I didn't know. I would have done the same for anyone." Benjamin's smile widened, genuine warmth in his eyes. "I know. That's exactly why I'm going to make you an offer." Benjamin leaned forward, his voice serious now. "I've been thinking about what you told me, about your knowledge of geology, your understanding of land, your ability to survive and work in harsh conditions. I need someone I can trust to survey and assess some of my northern properties. Someone who's looking for what's actually there, not just what they hope to find. Someone with integrity who won't try to cheat me the moment my back is turned. The job pays well, includes housing, and if you're interested, there's room to grow into land management. Marcus's mind raced. This was an opportunity beyond anything he had imagined when he woke up this morning. But something made him hesitate. Mr. Cross, I appreciate the offer more than you know. But I need to be clear about something. I'm not looking for charity or a handout because I helped you. If you're offering this out of obligation, I'd rather decline respectfully. Benjamin's expression turned serious, almost stern. Marcus, I didn't build what I've built by making decisions based on sentiment or obligation. I'm offering you this position because in the 2 days we spent on that trail, I watched how you think, how you handle adversity, how you treat others when you have nothing to gain. Those are the qualities I value most, and they're rare as gold. The fact that you saved my life opened my eyes to your character, but it's your character itself that's earning you this opportunity. So let me ask you plainly, are you interested in the position on its merits? Marcus met Benjamin's steady gaze and saw genuine respect there, not pity or obligation. He thought about his 3 failed years of prospecting, about his dwindling options, and about the unexpected turn his life had just taken. Sometimes fortune came not from the ground, but from the choices you made when no one was watching. He extended his hand across the table. When do I start? Marcus spent the next week in Redemption, preparing for his new role. Benjamin arranged for proper surveying equipment, quality clothing suitable for both field work and meetings with ranchers and town officials, and a strong horse to replace Marcus's tired burro. The old prospecting equipment was sold, and Marcus used the money to pay off his remaining debts, finally free of the weight he had carried for months. Benjamin's operation was larger and more complex than Marcus had imagined. The Cross Cattle Company wasn't just about raising beef, it involved water rights management, land leases, mineral rights assessments, and coordination with dozens of smaller ranchers who depended on Cross's resources. Benjamin explained that he had built his empire not through crushing competition, but through creating systems where everyone could benefit, as long as they dealt honestly. The frontier is changing, Benjamin explained as they reviewed maps in his hotel suite. The days of just taking what you want are ending. The future belongs to people who can organize, who can see the bigger picture, who can create value for everyone involved. That's where you come in. I need accurate assessments of land quality, water sources, and potential resources. Not wishful thinking or exaggerated claims, but honest evaluation. Marcus absorbed everything like a man dying of thirst finally finding water. This was the kind of work he had always wanted, using his knowledge and skills for something tangible and important. Benjamin was a demanding teacher but a fair one, sharing insights from 30 years of building his business. Marcus began to understand that Benjamin's success came not from luck or ruthlessness, but from understanding human nature, from keeping his word, and from thinking several steps ahead. On their last evening in Redemption before heading north to the properties Marcus would be surveying, Benjamin shared more of his own story. He had started with nothing, working as a trail hand, saving every penny, learning from every mistake. His first land purchase had been a calculated risk that paid off. Each success had been reinvested carefully, building slowly and steadily. I could have grown faster, Benjamin admitted, but I chose to grow sustainably. I wanted to build something that would last, not just make a quick fortune and flame out. Marcus saw parallels to his own prospecting experience, but in reverse. He had been chasing the big strike, the lucky find that would change everything instantly. Benjamin had pursued steady, consistent growth built on solid foundations. It was a lesson Marcus wished he had learned years earlier, but perhaps he hadn't been ready to understand it until now. Sometimes you had to fail at chasing dreams before you could appreciate building something real. The next morning, they rode north together, Benjamin wanting to personally introduce Marcus to the key people in the Northern Territories. As they traveled through land that Benjamin owned as far as the eye could see, Marcus felt both humbled and energized. A month ago, he had been at his lowest point, ready to give up entirely. Now he was riding beside one of the most successful men in Texas, being trained for a position of real responsibility and opportunity. "You're quiet," Benjamin observed as they stopped to water the horses at a creek. Marcus looked out over the rolling landscape, golden in the morning sun. "Just thinking about how one decision can change everything. If I had ridden past you that day, Thinking I couldn't spare the water and food, where would we both be right now? Benjamin nodded slowly. That's the thing about character, Marcus. It's not one big decision, it's 1,000 small ones. The kind of man who stops to help a stranger is the same kind of man who will do honest work when no one's watching, who will tell uncomfortable truths instead of pleasant lies, who will build something that lasts instead of something that just looks good for a moment. You didn't just save my life that day. You showed me who you are. And that's worth more than all the silver in these hills. The northern territories of Benjamin Cross's holdings were different from the harsh desert where Marcus had spent his prospecting years. Here, the land rolled in gentle hills covered with prairie grass, cut through by creeks and seasonal rivers that provided the water necessary for successful ranching. Benjamin owned or controlled over 200,000 acres in this region, leased to various ranchers and farmers under agreements that Benjamin explained were mutually beneficial rather than exploitative. Their first stop was the town of Crossroads, a settlement that had grown up around the intersection of two major cattle trails. The town itself sat partially on cross land, and Benjamin had helped fund its school, church, and general store. As they rode down the main street, people waved and called greetings, clearly recognizing Benjamin despite his preference for operating quietly. Marcus noticed something important. These weren't the fearful or resentful greetings that some powerful men received, but genuine warmth and respect. Benjamin introduced Marcus to Sam Porter, his Northern Territory manager, a grizzled veteran rancher who had worked with Benjamin for over 15 years. Sam looked Marcus up and down with the frank assessment of a man who had seen plenty of greenhorns come and go. "So you're the prospector who saved the boss's life," Sam said neutrally. "That was good of you. Question is, can you do the job he's hired you for?" Marcus appreciated the directness. "I don't know yet, but I'm willing to work hard to find out, and I won't lie about what I see." Sam's weathered face cracked into a slight smile. "Good enough. Come on, I'll show you what we're dealing with." Over the next several days, Sam took Marcus on a comprehensive tour of the northern properties, explaining the complex web of water rights, grazing agreements, and land quality issues that Marcus would be helping to manage. What struck Marcus most was how Benjamin's system worked in practice. Smaller ranchers leased land from Cross at fair rates with agreements that included access to water sources and shared use of certain facilities. In exchange, Cross had first option to buy their cattle at market rates, creating a reliable supply chain. Disputes were settled by agreed-upon arbitration rather than through courts or force. Everyone knew where they stood, and everyone had incentive to maintain good relationships. "Some folks back east think Benjamin's too soft," Sam explained as they surveyed a particularly good grazing area. "They say he could squeeze more profit if he raised lease rates and cut out the cooperative agreements. But Benjamin understands something they don't. Happy ranchers who are making money don't cause trouble, don't break agreements, and don't look for ways to cheat you. He makes slightly less per acre, but he has virtually no problems, no legal battles, and complete reliability. Plus, when opportunities come up, people come to him first because they trust him." Marcus absorbed this wisdom while conducting his geological and water surveys. His prospecting experience, which had seemed like wasted years, suddenly became valuable. He could read the land, understand water flow, identify areas suitable for different uses, and assess the practical value of resources. His reports were detailed and honest, sometimes telling Benjamin that certain areas weren't worth developing despite initial hopes. Benjamin appreciated this honesty, even when the news wasn't what he wanted to hear. One evening, sitting around a campfire during a survey trip, Sam shared more insight. "You know why Benjamin really hired you? It wasn't just because you saved his life or because you've got good skills. It's because in that moment on the trail, when you had nothing and he had everything but you didn't know it, you treated him like a human being worth saving." Benjamin spent 30 years dealing with people who see him as either a source of money or an obstacle to overcome. You saw him as a person. That's rare in his world. Marcus stared into the fire, understanding that his new position carried responsibilities beyond just surveying land. Benjamin was trusting him not just with work, but with a system built on integrity and fair dealing. The real test wouldn't be whether Marcus could do the technical work, it would be whether he could maintain those principles when no one was watching, when cutting corners might be profitable, when the easy path diverged from the right path. As the stars filled the Texas sky, Marcus made a silent commitment to prove worthy of the trust placed in him. 3 months into his new position, Marcus faced his first serious challenge. While surveying a remote section of the northern properties, he discovered something that made his prospector's heart race with recognition: clear indicators of a significant silver deposit running through land that Benjamin owned but had leased to a struggling rancher named Thomas Garrett. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. After 3 years of fruitless searching, he had finally found silver, but it belonged to someone else. Marcus spent 2 days carefully assessing the deposit, his old prospecting skills coming back like muscle memory. The vein was substantial, potentially worth hundreds of thousands of dollars if properly mined. Under the terms of Garrett's lease agreement, mineral rights reverted to Benjamin Cross, a standard clause in all the leases. Garrett had no idea what lay beneath his grazing land, and legally had no claim to it. Marcus could report this finding to Benjamin, who could legally terminate the lease and develop the mine, making both of them wealthy. But Marcus kept thinking about Thomas Garrett, a widower with 3 children, barely making ends meet on his small ranching operation. The man had welcomed Marcus warmly during his survey visits, sharing meals and stories about building a life for his family despite constant struggles. Garrett's lease payments were always on time, and Sam Porter had mentioned that Garrett was one of the most honest, hardworking men in the territory. If the lease was terminated, even legally and with fair compensation, Garrett would lose the land he had spent 5 years improving and the stable home his children needed. Marcus wrestled with the dilemma for days. The old Marcus, the desperate prospector, would have jumped at this opportunity. This could be his fortune, the vindication of all those failed years. Benjamin would certainly reward him handsomely for such a discovery. But the man Marcus was becoming couldn't ignore the human cost of such a decision. He thought about what Benjamin had said about character being 1,000 small decisions, and he thought about the principles Benjamin had built his empire upon. After a week of careful consideration, Marcus rode to Crossroads and requested a private meeting with Benjamin, who had come north to review progress. In the privacy of Benjamin's office above the general store, Marcus laid out his findings with complete honesty. He showed his surveys, his mineral assessments, his estimates of the deposit's value. Benjamin listened intently, his expression unreadable. When Marcus finished, Benjamin leaned back in his chair and was silent for a long moment. "You realize this could make us both very wealthy," Benjamin finally said. "That deposit is worth more than you'd make in 20 years of salary, and you'd be entitled to a substantial finder's fee. You also realize that legally, we have every right to develop this resource. The lease agreement is clear." Marcus nodded. "I know. But I also know Thomas Garrett. He's a good man trying to build something for his family. If we take this land, we're following the letter of the law but violating the spirit of everything you've built. Your reputation is based on fair dealing, on creating systems where everyone benefits. Taking this silver would undermine that." Benjamin stood and walked to the window, looking out over the town below. "What would you suggest we do instead?" Marcus had prepared for this question. "We offer Garrett a new agreement. He keeps his lease, but we develop the mine in partnership. He gets a percentage of the profits as the landowner, enough to secure his family's future. We get to develop the resource. Everyone benefits. Yes, we make less than if we took it all, but we maintain the principles that make people trust us, and we help a good man who deserves a break." Benjamin turned back, and Marcus saw something in his eyes that he couldn't quite read. "That would be the decent thing to do. It would also set a precedent that would cost me money on every similar situation in the future. Other ranchers would expect the same treatment." Marcus met his gaze steadily. "Yes, sir. But those other ranchers would also trust you more, work harder, and be more loyal. And they'd know that doing business with Benjamin Cross means fair treatment, not just legal treatment. That's worth something you can't put a price on." The silence stretched between them like a held breath. Finally, Benjamin smiled, a genuine expression of approval and something deeper, perhaps relief. "You just passed the most important test, Marcus. You found wealth, had legal right to it, and chose to do the right thing instead of the profitable thing. That's the kind of man I need beside me, Not just working for me. We'll do it your way. And from now on, you're not just a surveyor. You're my partner in the Northern Territories. We'll draw up papers making you a partial owner in our operations here. You've earned it. Marcus felt stunned. Sir, I didn't suggest this to get a promotion. I just wanted to do the right thing. Benjamin laughed, the sound warm and genuine. I know. That's exactly why you're getting it. Anyone can do the right thing when it benefits them. Doing it when it costs you, that's character. Welcome to partnership, Marcus. Now let's go talk to Thomas Garrett and change his life. The meeting with Thomas Garrett was one of the most satisfying experiences of Marcus's life. When Benjamin and Marcus explained what had been discovered on his land and presented the partnership offer, the rough rancher wept openly, unable to believe his fortune. The new agreement would provide Garrett with enough income to not only secure his ranch but to send his children to school in San Antonio, a dream he had thought impossible. Word of the arrangement spread quickly through the territory, and the effect was exactly what Marcus had predicted. Benjamin Cross's reputation for fair dealing grew even stronger. The silver mine development became a model for cooperative business in the region. Benjamin brought in experienced miners, but insisted on hiring locally when possible, creating jobs for men who had been struggling to support their families. Garrett learned aspects of mine management, diversifying his skills beyond ranching. Marcus oversaw the operation as part of his new expanded role, ensuring that environmental damage was minimized and that safety standards were maintained even when that meant higher costs. Over the following months, Marcus grew into his partnership role with increasing confidence. Benjamin gave him substantial autonomy in the Northern Territories, trusting his judgment on land assessments, lease negotiations, and dispute resolutions. Marcus discovered he had a talent for seeing situations from multiple perspectives and finding solutions that worked for everyone involved. His reputation began to grow independent of Benjamin's, as ranchers and businessmen recognized his fairness and competence. One afternoon, while reviewing survey maps in the Crossroads office, Sam Porter brought news of a situation developing to the east. A group of new settlers had established homesteads on land they believed was open territory, but their farms actually encroached on the edge of cross holdings. The traditional approach would be to enforce property rights and remove the settlers, but Marcus suggested a different path. After investigating, he learned the settlers had been misled by a dishonest land agent who had taken their money and disappeared. Marcus proposed that Benjamin offer the settlers legitimate leases at minimal cost for the first 3 years, giving them time to establish their farms and start generating income. In exchange, the settlers would agree to sell a portion of their crops to cross operations at fair market rates, helping to supply the mining camp and ranch operations. Benjamin agreed, and Marcus rode out to meet with the settlers personally, expecting resistance but hoping for understanding. The meeting was tense at first. The settlers, mostly families from back east with little frontier experience, were frightened and angry, having invested everything in land they now learned they didn't legally own. Marcus listened to their stories without judgment, understanding their perspective. He had been in desperate situations himself not long ago. Then he presented Benjamin's offer, explaining clearly and honestly what it meant and why they should accept it. A young farmer named Michael Brennan, clearly the informal leader of the group, studied Marcus carefully. Why would Cross do this? He could just run us off. We've got no legal standing. Marcus chose his words carefully. Because Benjamin Cross builds his business on relationships, not just legal rights. You folks made an honest mistake. You've already started improving the land, planting crops, building homes. Benjamin would rather have productive neighbors who trust him than empty land and enemies. Plus, your crops will benefit his operations. Everyone wins. The settlers accepted the offer, and over time, they became some of the most loyal people in the region. Their success stories attracted more honest settlers, and the Eastern Territories began to flourish with small farms that complemented the ranching operations. Marcus had helped create not just business solutions, but a growing community built on the principles Benjamin had taught him: fair dealing, long-term thinking, and the understanding that helping others succeed was often the best path to your own success. One evening, as Marcus and Benjamin reviewed the quarter's results, Benjamin raised his glass in a toast. To the prospector who found something more valuable than silver, a better way of doing business. Your father would be proud of what you've become, Marcus. Marcus felt emotion tighten his throat. He thought about the desperate man he had been just months ago, ready to give up, and about the simple act of sharing his last meal that had led to all of this. I had a good teacher, he said simply. Benjamin smiled. We taught each other. That's what real partnership is. Success brought new complications. As the Northern Territories prospered and word spread about Benjamin Cross's fair dealing practices, other business interests began to take notice. A large cattle syndicate from Chicago, backed by Eastern money, started making aggressive moves into Texas, buying up land and water rights, offering prices that smaller operators couldn't refuse. Unlike Benjamin's cooperative approach, the syndicate operated on pure profit motive, raising lease rates dramatically and showing little concern for the people affected. The syndicate's representative, a smooth-talking businessman named Charles Whitmore, arrived in Crossroads with a proposition for Benjamin. Over dinner at the hotel, Whitmore laid out an offer to purchase all of Benjamin's northern holdings at a substantial premium. The numbers were staggering, more money than most men would see in several lifetimes. Whitmore made it clear the offer was limited time, pressure designed to force a quick decision. Marcus attended the meeting as Benjamin's partner and watched Whitmore work. The man was polished and persuasive, painting pictures of the fortune Benjamin could enjoy in retirement, the freedom from responsibility, the chance to live comfortably in San Francisco or even Paris. But Marcus also noticed what Whitmore carefully didn't say: what would happen to the ranchers, farmers, and settlers who depended on the current cooperative system. When Marcus asked directly, Whitmore's answer was coldly honest. Business is business. We'll honor existing leases until they expire, then renegotiate at market rates. People will adapt. After Whitmore left, Marcus and Benjamin sat in silence for a while. That's an incredible amount of money, Marcus finally said. You could set up every person here with something, and still have more than you could spend. Benjamin nodded slowly. But money isn't everything, Marcus. I've built something here over 30 years. It's not just property, it's a system, a community, a way of doing things that works for everyone. If I sell to that syndicate, within 5 years most of these people will be squeezed out, the land will be exploited without thought for sustainability, and everything we've built will be gone. Marcus felt relief at Benjamin's words but also concern. They won't just go away. If you refuse, they'll look for other ways to pressure you. Benjamin's expression hardened with determination. Then we'll have to be smarter and tougher than they are. I didn't build this by being weak, Marcus. I built it by understanding that the right way and the profitable way can be the same thing if you're patient and strategic. It's time to show these city folks how business is really done. Over the next weeks, the syndicate's tactics became more aggressive. They approached individual ranchers with offers to buy their leases or purchase their operations outright. Several smaller operators, frightened by the syndicate's resources and intimidated by their tactics, began to waver. Marcus spent long days riding between properties, meeting with nervous ranchers, listening to their concerns, and helping them understand the long-term implications of selling out. The breakthrough came when Marcus met with a group of mid-sized ranchers who were considering the syndicate's offers. Instead of just appealing to loyalty or fear, Marcus did what he did best. He showed them the numbers. Using detailed analysis, he demonstrated how the syndicate's model would ultimately cost them more in higher lease rates and reduced support services than they would gain from the immediate payment. He showed how Benjamin's cooperative approach had increased their profits over time through shared resources and collective bargaining power. You're not choosing between Benjamin Cross and the syndicate, Marcus explained. You're choosing between a system that's built to help you succeed and one that's built to extract maximum profit regardless of what it does to you. Benjamin makes money by helping you make money. The syndicate makes money whether you succeed or fail. Which partner do you want? The logic was undeniable, and one by one, the ranchers recommitted to their existing agreements, several even extending their leases long-term to demonstrate solidarity. But Marcus knew the syndicate wouldn't give up easily. Men with that much money and ambition didn't take no for an answer. The real battle was just beginning, and it would test everything Marcus had learned about business, loyalty, and standing up for what was right even when facing overwhelming force. As he rode back to Crossroads under a sky-threatening storm, Marcus felt both anxious and determined. He had found his purpose here, helping to maintain a system that proved business could be conducted with both profit and principle. He wouldn't let it be destroyed without a fight. The syndicate's next move was more calculated and dangerous. They purchased land upstream on the primary creek that fed water to much of the Northern Territories, then announced plans to dam the creek for a large-scale irrigation project that would divert most of the water flow. The technical legality was questionable, but the syndicate had hired lawyers from back east who knew how to exploit gaps in frontier water law. If successful, the dam would devastate ranching and farming operations downstream, forcing desperate landowners to sell at rock-bottom prices. Benjamin and Marcus called an emergency meeting of all the affected parties in Crossroads. The gathering was tense, with frightened ranchers demanding to know what Benjamin planned to do, some angrily suggesting he should have taken the syndicate's buyout offer when he had the chance. Marcus watched Benjamin handle the crowd with the calm authority of a man who had faced challenges before and knew panic solved nothing. "We have options," Benjamin said firmly. "First, we're challenging the dam permit through legal channels. I've already contacted lawyers in Austin who specialize in water rights. Second, we're documenting all existing water usage to establish our prior claim under Texas law. Third, and most important, we're not giving in to fear. That's what they want, for us to panic and sell. We stay united, we stay smart, and we protect what we've built together." Marcus took responsibility for the documentation effort, working with Sam Porter to survey and record every water source, well, and irrigation system in the territories. It was exhaustive work, but it established a clear record of historical water use that could support their legal challenge. Meanwhile, Benjamin's lawyers filed injunctions to delay the dam construction, buying time to build their case. But the syndicate played dirty. Whitmore began spreading rumors that Benjamin was financially overextended, that he couldn't sustain a long legal battle, that anyone who stayed loyal to him would go down with the ship. Some of the newer settlers, not yet fully integrated into the community, began to waver. Marcus found himself not just surveying land but also shoring up relationships, reminding people of what they had built together and what they stood to lose. The situation came to a head when Marcus discovered something crucial during his water surveys. While examining the proposed dam site, he found evidence that the land the syndicate had purchased had actually been fraudulently obtained from the original owner through forged documents. The elderly rancher who supposedly sold the land had been dead for 6 months before the sale date. The syndicate had been deceived by the same dishonest land agent who had previously defrauded the settlers, and they had built their entire water strategy on a foundation of fraud. Marcus immediately took his findings to Benjamin, who recognized the significance. This wasn't just a legal technicality, it was proof that the syndicate's entire position was built on criminal activity. But confronting them directly with this information could be dangerous. Men who had invested heavily in fraudulent land deals might resort to desperate measures to protect their investment. They needed to handle this carefully and strategically. Benjamin arranged a private meeting with Whitmore, insisting that Marcus attend as his partner and witness. In the same hotel dining room where Benjamin had first revealed his identity to Marcus months ago, they laid out the evidence of the fraudulent land purchase. Whitmore's smooth confidence cracked as he reviewed the documentation, death certificates, witness statements, timeline analysis that made the fraud undeniable. "You're in a difficult position," Benjamin said calmly. "Your syndicate invested in stolen land. When this becomes public, and it will, you'll face criminal charges, civil lawsuits, and complete loss of credibility. Every business deal your syndicate has in Texas will be scrutinized. The legal costs alone will be devastating, and you personally will be named in the investigations." Whitmore's face had gone pale, but his eyes showed the calculation of a man looking for angles. "What do you want?" Marcus spoke up, his voice firm. "We want you to withdraw completely from the Northern Territories. Sell back any legitimate land you've purchased at fair market rates to the original owners if they want it. Abandon the dam project. Leave these communities alone." Whitmore laughed bitterly. "You expect me to take that back to my investors? They'll destroy me." Benjamin leaned forward. Better than prison. And here's what we're offering. We keep this quiet. We don't press charges or publicize the fraud. You tell your investors the Texas market isn't as profitable as projected and recommend withdrawal. You save face, avoid criminal liability, and walk away. Otherwise, we go public tomorrow and let the consequences fall where they may. The silence stretched long and uncomfortable. Finally, Whitmore nodded slowly, defeated. You're tougher than I thought, Cross. Tougher than most men with your reputation for fairness. Benjamin's expression didn't soften. Fairness doesn't mean weakness. It means treating honest people honestly and protecting them from those who would prey on them. You came here trying to exploit good people. That was your mistake. Within 2 weeks, the syndicate had withdrawn from the Northern Territories entirely. The dam project was abandoned, the purchased lands were sold back, and Whitmore was reassigned to the syndicate's operations in another territory. The communities Benjamin and Marcus had protected celebrated their victory, but both men knew the real lesson was deeper. They had won not through superior force or wealth, but through diligent work, attention to detail, and the willingness to stand firm on principles even under pressure. The night after the syndicate's withdrawal was finalized, Marcus and Benjamin stood on the porch of the Crossroads office, watching the sun set over land that would remain in the hands of the people who worked it. You found that fraud, Benjamin said quietly. Your prospecting skills, your attention to detail, your refusal to give up when examining that site, that's what saved everything we built. The irony is, you spent 3 years searching for silver and finding nothing. Now you're not even looking and you find the most valuable thing of all, the truth that protects a whole community. Marcus smiled at the observation. Maybe I was looking in the wrong places all along. Turns out the real treasure wasn't in the ground. It was in the work, the relationships, the purpose. Benjamin nodded. Your father would be proud. You proved his belief in you was justified, just not in the way either of you expected. The words touched something deep in Marcus's heart, a healing of old wounds he hadn't fully realized still hurt. He had finally found what he had been searching for all along. With the syndicate threat eliminated, the Northern Territories entered a period of unprecedented growth and stability. The cooperative model that Benjamin and Marcus had defended became even more robust, with new members joining and existing members deepening their commitment. Marcus found himself increasingly involved in strategic planning, helping Benjamin think through expansion opportunities and potential challenges before they became crises. One significant development came from an unexpected source. Thomas Garrett, the rancher whose land contained the silver mine, approached Marcus with a proposal. His oldest son, Daniel, had shown remarkable aptitude for both ranching and business, and Garrett wanted to know if there might be a place for the young man in cross operations. Marcus saw potential in the idea and suggested something broader, a formal training program where promising young people from the territories could learn land management, business practices, and the cooperative principles that made the system work. Benjamin embraced the concept enthusiastically, seeing it as a way to ensure the longevity of what they had built. Marcus took charge of developing the program, drawing on his own experiences of learning from Benjamin and Sam Porter. The program would accept 6 young people each year, providing them with rotating assignments across different operations: ranching, mining, farming, and administration. They would learn practical skills but also the philosophy and principles that made cooperative business successful. The first class included Daniel Garrett, Michael Brennan's daughter Sarah, the settler whose family had been saved by the lease arrangement, and 4 other young people from various backgrounds across the territories. Marcus discovered he had a talent for teaching, able to explain complex concepts clearly and to inspire the same passion for building sustainable systems that Benjamin had instilled in him. Watching these young people grow and develop reminded Marcus of his own transformation from desperate prospector to respected business partner. Meanwhile, the silver mine continued to produce steady profits, but Marcus never forgot the lesson of that discovery. When new mineral deposits were found on other leased lands, Marcus established a protocol that always included the landholder in partnership arrangements. The precedent set with Garrett became standard practice, and it strengthened loyalty across the territories. People knew that dealing honestly with cross operations meant sharing in success, not being exploited for it. Benjamin began gradually reducing his direct involvement in daily operations, spending more time in San Antonio and delegating increasing authority to Marcus. It wasn't retirement exactly, but a transition toward Marcus taking primary responsibility for the Northern Territories. This shift was formalized when Benjamin restructured the partnership agreement, giving Marcus majority ownership of the northern operations while Benjamin retained strategic oversight and control of the southern holdings. The change was emotional for Marcus. In less than 2 years, he had gone from a failed prospector ready to give up to a property owner and business leader responsible for operations spanning hundreds of thousands of acres and affecting hundreds of families. The weight of that responsibility was substantial, but Marcus felt ready for it. He had learned from the best, had been tested by serious challenges, and had proven his judgment sound even under pressure. One evening, as Marcus prepared to sign the new partnership papers, Benjamin pulled him aside. "I want you to understand something. I'm not doing this because I'm tired or because I want to retire. I'm doing it because you've earned it, and because these people need a leader who will be here long term. I'm 63 years old. I built something important, but it needs someone younger and energetic to take it into the future. That's you, Marcus." Marcus felt the full weight of the moment. "I won't let you down. I won't let them down." Benjamin smiled warmly. "I know. That's why I'm doing this. Remember what I told you when we first met? Character is 1,000 small decisions. You've made those decisions consistently, even when they cost you. That's the foundation of everything, Marcus. As long as you stay true to that, everything else will work out." As Marcus signed the papers, officially becoming the primary owner and operator of the Northern Territories, he thought about the journey that had brought him here. It had started with a simple act of compassion, sharing his last meal with a dying stranger. That one decision, made without thought of reward, had opened a door to a life he could never have imagined. But it wasn't luck or charity that had sustained him. It was hard work, integrity, and the willingness to keep learning and growing. The prospector who had searched for silver in the ground had found something far more valuable: purpose, partnership, and a legacy worth building.